Welcome to CFL Talk on the Road here in Vancouver for the 111th Grey Cup between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Toronto Argonauts. The 2024 Grey Cup is a rematch between the Argonauts, who won in 2022, and the Bombers, who lost. That was a very interesting finish to that game. I found myself in the tunnel while that game ended. We're here in the Vancouver Centre East, where there's a lot going on. We've got everything football. We've got all kinds of stuff going on, lots of stuff for the kids to play, and also other football enthusiasts. Later tonight, there'll be parties going on everywhere in here. And this morning, to start what happened, we woke up this morning to a horse in our lobby.
Well, the horse was there last night, too.
Was it?
Yeah, as we were leaving the hotel to go to the awards. So I've never seen the horse before.
I have. I've seen it in the Royal York a couple of times.
That's what makes this week so special, is that a couple of things. One, the traditions continue, right? You get the horse in the lobby. That's something that's a staple here at the Grey Cup. And then you get, looking around here, it was busier when we first got here. Now it's getting later in the day. People are getting ready to go home.
Or the transition from playing to playing.
Yeah.
And dancing and stuff.
I've never seen so many zip lines in my life.
Oh my goodness! We came
There's
here.
One right here, right beside us. I didn't even realize that.
We came here. We landed on Tuesday night at 9:00 local time, midnight Toronto time, where we left from. And there's a zip line going over the water. And a few of the reporters were walking by, and all I heard from all the reporters, not on a bet. I'm not going on that thing. And I'm a swimmer, and I'm not going on that thing.
Yeah, no, I said I can go. If I did want to go to the wild, I'll just go myself. I don't need a zip line to take me in there if something goes wrong.
Then last night, they installed another zip line along the road, on top of the road. So if you want to land on asphalt or water, you got your choice. So there's a lot, and then if you want to do it indoors, you got here just to the left of us. It's right there. Yeah, this looks like a lot of fun. You know, there's the typical stuff that you see at Grey Cup festivals, which is where we're at. We're in the middle of the Grey Cup festival, where there's a lot of things to do. Like I said, for children, there's tossing the football. They've got a football machine that kicks the ball out, and people are diving.
You got the goalposts here if you want to do some field goals. They got everything you could think of at a festival. Like we've done the last two in Hamilton now. The first one was during a pandemic.
Yeah,
they didn't have this stuff. The second one, I didn't notice this as much.
It was still not back to normal. It still wasn't back to normal. But now this is what you expect at every Grey Cup festival, and it's a lot of fun. And later there'll be dancing parties. The teams put together stuff. Their fans, they're going to go to the Argo party. Okay, let's go to the Argo party. And to be totally fair and straight, the Rider Pride and the Elks room is always the Edmonton one. Oh my goodness, it's just awesome. There's a lot going on, and the East Coast is represented as well, as it is every year and has been for the last some 25 years. So this is the fun part. But last night, David and I had a chance to go to the awards ceremony, and the fun part is when they give us the winners, and then they tell us you can't go nowhere, and if you go to the washroom, you got to leave your phone here.
Locked down.
We're locked down. You can't. We knew we had to wait to talk about who actually won. So today's the day we'll talk about it. And the one thing about the awards that and this location, everything is so central. If you flew into Vancouver to be here, you just had to go from your hotel to basically here. In fact, a little ways away is the hockey arena across the street from the football stadium. We had a chance to go there. I was amazed by the stadium. I love the roof from the inside.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's a little chilly.
Chilly.
You think with a closed dome stadium that it would be temperature controlled. Unfortunately, I think we get a little spoiled back home in Toronto with the dome there. But it looks like a place ready for a big game, right? Like, Mosaic Stadium, great stadium. Toronto and Hamilton, because they're limited in their capacity. Yes, when they put up the temporary bleachers, it makes it a little bigger. But you come to this stadium, you think of like all the events that have been here. It has that different aura to it, but No, and what I do love about Vancouver, just what I've noticed is everything. You just said, you walk 2 minutes, you're at the convention center. You walk 20 minutes, you get back to your hotel. You walk 15 minutes, you could actually probably get to the stadium in about 20 to 30 minute walk if you don't want to take transit. But there's also transit that gets you around. Like I can see why they really wanted to have it here with once they got the ownership group intact. But I'm like, what took so long to get it here?
No kidding. And then of course you're on. Basically, we get a ride from shuttles, and David goes, Frank. What, David? What? There's a Costco beside the stadium.
We haven't even gone to the Costco yet. I'm like, we gotta stock
There's
up.
snow-capped mountains, like you can see them, and he's worried about going to Costco, not to the snow-capped mountains.
You really want to go hiking up those
No,
mountains?
I don't. I was blowing smoke.
With his knees, too.
With my knees, I wouldn't make it to the bottom of the hill.
I'll say this. It's very... Sir, for the older CFL fans, I think they appreciate that everything is close by.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when we landed, and I make the joke, but it actually is true, I was in the airplane trying to look to see, because I love being in an airplane and seeing the scenery, right? And I'm looking, I can't see nothing. All I see is clouds, in the middle of clouds, and you can see you're flying through a cloud, and I don't see any land. And in the distance, I see a couple of lights, and I'm looking. The first time I realized I could see the ground was when we hit it with the tires of the airplane. And I'm telling you, when people didn't clap when they landed, because I think they were in shock and didn't know they could clap, because it was an interesting way to land. I've never landed like that. I've been in some pretty hairy landings, but that was fun. That was fun to see Vancouver. And then this morning, David woke up and I said, David, go to the window. He went to the window. He looked out the window. I said, look up. And we saw the sky. That's the first time we've seen the sky in three days.
Yeah, I know. It's the weather here. That's the only thing about Vancouver is I was told you deal with a lot of rain.
They didn't lie.
Pack for wet weather. But also a little damp and cool here too. But I mean, I think you take that over minus 30, minus 40 degree weather too.
So we were talking, and I said to David, I said, it'll be funny. We'll probably they give you a little gift pack. Nothing really extravagant from the CFL. And I said, they'll probably give us a slicker or an umbrella. We opened up, there was an umbrella in it. Well, thank you very much for providing us with an umbrella. I guess they're trying to tell us something, and it held true, I guess. We haven't used the umbrella yet because the service here has been great. The shuttles from the airport to here, we've been treated really well, really like it, and it's a lot of fun. So where we are specifically right now is we're in Radio Row. Radio Row is where all the broadcasters, whether it's podcasts, streamcasts, radio stations, they're all here. They can all hook their stuff here, and they do their broadcast from this location. Yeah,
and it's usually something that they set up every Grey Cup because they want the content. People want to play, and it's different to do it in a studio or different to do it in like a little room. It means something else to do it where everything else is happening, right? Where the action is. You can't be doing a show like this. Usually, Frank and I are not even usually doing our show together.
Yeah.
Usually, he's in his little office. I'm in my office, and we're doing this over computer screens. And to be doing it in person, I think it just adds to the ambiance of what we're doing here.
So the biggest thing that happens so far, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the practices. You get to interview all the players, the coaches, all that. Last night we went to the CFL Awards, and a great night, a lot of great football players being congratulated on wonderful things, and other people outside the football, basically celebrating all the Canadian Football League and all the partners in the Canadian Football League. We'll talk about the players, and I guess we have to start with the most outstanding player, who happens also to be the most outstanding Canadian, Brady Oliveira.
Yeah, just, a player that has really become a star in this league. He's been a star the last couple of years, right? Back-to-back most outstanding Canadian, finalist for the most outstanding player last year, gets it this year, and he's a player that really truly, and we heard about it last night, really truly prides himself in being the leader, right? of all, the face of Canadian football. It's been a while since I think we've really had that. We've had good Canadian players, but to have one that's at the top of the league in terms of his play, there's no doubting he was going to win both. And funny, he's only the fourth player to win both, and the last time was 11 years ago with John Cornish.
Exactly.
I think it truly speaks to how a special talent Brady Oliveira is, and just how difficult it is for a running back. Let's not remember, he is playing the hardest position it is to really have an impact every game, because the CFL, everybody wants to see the quarterbacks play, right? Everybody wants to see, the 300-400 yard passing games. The running game tends to get put to the wayside, in the back burner. Brady Oliveira changed that in a lot of ways. It changed years ago. I think Andrew Harris kind of changed it a little bit.
Cornish.
And John Cornish did. But those, as Brady said, you have to go up against Americans in those situations too.
And the other thing is doing it as a running back. Most people expect, and usually it ends up happening, that a quarterback wins the award, the most valuable player. Canadians more and more are becoming more proficient in playing this game really well. The commissioner in his speech talked about, you almost are tempted to say that you don't need, to have the Canadian rule. You almost don't need it. But Brady immediately, when I talked to him about that, he said, nope, got to have Canadians in here. We got to have the ratio. We can't change that. And Brady's very high on promoting the game and promoting children to play football. He wants to be a good example to them. And you know what? He's a really hardworking guy. He is what he is because of the work that he does.
He is, and you listen to him defend that Canadian ratio, where I think then it becomes too easy to neglect. Not only neglect Canadian talent, but one thing that the ratio does is it puts a premium on that talent. It makes you realize not only to get Canadian players up here, but it means more to get those Canadian players that are actually going to have an impact each and every day. And that's something that was missing. You see the teams that aren't competing each and every year, they don't have those impact Canadians in those impact positions, because the CFL draft, my biggest thing about it, what I didn't like about the draft was it was just a way for teams to just add offensive linemen, defensive linemen sometimes, just filling up his roster spots, not truly going after the best Canadians that can have an impact on your team. That's changed. It's changed because now you realize not only do you want to get the best Canadian talent, but that the Canadian talent is actually getting better. The Canadian talent is actually able to go toe-to-toe with the Americans. We heard, I hate to jump a little bit here, but Nick Anderson, right, the Rookie of the Year, he comes in, he says, there are guys up here that could compete with some of the guys who play down south. Now, he's not saying that they all can make the NFL, but they can give a good run for their money for some of the players that do play in the NFL. And these are some of these players that don't get the level of, development, the level of, coaching that they do down in the States. And the fact that they're, how far the game has come to make that close the gap on that talent gap a little bit.
Yeah, Nick Anderson is an Edmonton Elk, and he represented them really well in winning the Rookie of the Year. We in Toronto, it was a tough decision. Mackay Polk was in that conversation, and I got to tell you, Anderson won it, was deserving of it, and it was a lot of fun. It was my first time to vote for these awards. It was a thrill to do it, and then of course, one of the big things about the awards is what we heard throughout every time the award was given. The next thing we heard was, I would basically heard it, or we knew it was in their hearts, I wish I could be in the Grey Cup and win that instead. And Brady was actually asked, would you be willing to give away those two trophies?
He didn't even have to finish the question. He knew right away that question was coming.
Yeah.
And again, the individual awards means a lot. It means what it means. It sort of solidifies the ground. It's a way to show these players appreciation of what they've done, But for them, football is always that team game, because you heard a lot of them talking about, if it wasn't for my teammates, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for my coaches, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for the support from the team, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in. I think that's what makes these awards special, is that there are a lot of sacrifices that these players make, right? Some of the American players, they leave their families. You hear Jason Moss
6 months a year,
right? You hear Jason Moss talk about, the long days as a coach, right? It doesn't just end with practice. It's prep, it's meetings, it's all those things. So it's just one of those things where you have to understand that football, there's a lot of sacrifice involved when you're playing this game.
Yeah, you love the game, and it's a game that basically demands a lot from you. And to arrive at the place where you end up winning an award, you really are. It really is something that you win an award, because it substantiates the hard work that each of these players, coaches, and individuals outside of football that get awards as well. Roland Milligan was the most valuable offensive player of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. He was very thrilled with winning, and he was a little. You could hear the competitiveness between the positions that players play, and his thing was, well, DBs hardly ever win the award, and we think we're a little handicapped. That was a little shot over the bow, and of course us, the media, we're in front of him, so he's basically telling us that you guys don't give us a shot. Well, he got a shot and he won it, and well deserving of it. One of the reasons why the Saskatchewan Roughriders had a better season than people might have thought they were going to have. Yeah. And Corey Mace is the perfect kind of coach for a player like Roland Milligan.
It is, and yeah, you speak to when you go get a new defensive coordinator, there's a learning process. Things change. Language in the defense change. How you play, the techniques. There are a lot of changes. But at the same time, these coaches will also want to play to their players' strengths. I think that's what something like a Corey Mace, that's what he prioritizes. He wants his players to play within what they can do. Go to their strengths. And Saskatchewan's defense has always been among the tops in the league. And I think it just it's nice to see a player like him, like defensive backs. I always say defensive backs have the hardest jobs out of all the CFL positions. You have a receiver running at you with a head start, and you got to stop these receivers. It's not easy. And you think about the West Division too, right? These guys got to go up against guys like Kenny Lawler a few times in a year. Not an easy feat, especially in Saskatchewan. They're like, I do like that a defensive back did win it. I voted for him as well. I felt that you look at the season he had, the impact that he had on that team from that position. Usually when you look at Defensive Player of the Year, it goes to a guy like, Matthew Betts, who gets all this, sacks, right? Or you give it to the guy on the linebacker who gets a lot of tackles. Rarely, do the defensive backs, because sometimes they look bad on a play, or and it's in a lot of ways you don't get to hear the name of the defensive backs who cover the receivers in a position to make sure that the guy who's getting the sack is able to make the sack. So it's nice to see a defensive back get recognized.
And also, it's been a few years, but still, the rules changed a little bit to make defensive backs' jobs that much more difficult. We saw a defensive back basically helping the turnaround last week with Toronto winning, the Eastern Final. If that PI doesn't happen, do the Argos end up in a position to win that game? A fair question, and part of the difficulty of being a defensive back. Then we had, of course, I got to tell you, most outstanding offensive lineman was Ryan Hunter, a Toronto Argonaut. We interviewed him earlier, and he's thrilled with being at the Grey Cup and looking for a chance to win the Grey Cup. When he talked to us, he let us know that mattered.
He did, and I look at, with a guy like Ryan Hunter, I even asked him this last night. I don't think he had talked about enough. He started as a left guard moves to left tackle. Left tackle is one of the hardest positions to play. Tackle is one of the hardest positions to play in the CFL because you are dealing with very fast defensive players who have a yard of separation. Sometimes the yard of separation does help offensive linemen because you get a chance to you get a bit of a chance to get yourself ready, set yourself. But the offensive line position is so tough in the CFL to be able to do multi. And look, Ryan Dinwiddie, when I spoke to him about Ryan Hunter when he was nominated for the award, he said like he doesn't get enough credit. We could have Ryan Hunter play any position on our offensive line. If we need a center, we can play Ryan Hunter at center. We need to move. If we have an injury and we need to move a guy, we can move Ryan Hunter. The versatility that he's shown, and this is a player who was on an NFL roster for a few years and tried. He eventually did make it on and play NFL games, but he was a guy that ultimately then decided to come to the CFL, and it's been the seamless transition for him. 2 straight years in a row that an Argo offensive line also wins the award. I think it says something to what Toronto has done really well and why Toronto is so successful because they have those players.
And why their quarterbacks have a chance to be successful. Nothing that, when you get to this level as a quarterback, given time, almost any quarterback can do some real serious damage. So Ryan Hunter wins that award, and congratulations to him. We also had most outstanding special team player. Now, again, we can go back to last week and talk about Janarian Grant, who basically another reason why the Toronto Argonauts won that game against Montreal, the first place team.
Another reason why the Argonauts have won a lot of games this year. It's not just the ability to score touchdowns; it's flip the field, get good field position. That's what Janarian Grant's here for. Janarian Grant was not in the Argos' plans this year. He was left unsigned. Any team could have gone Janarian Grant in training camp. He could have gone back to Winnipeg, but they decided they wanted to go in a different direction. Well, not only a different direction, but also maybe not spend as much money on a returner. And what he is, Toronto went from having the best returner last year to having the best returner this year.
2 different guys.
2 different players. Javon League last year and then Janarian Grant. Seamless transition in a lot of ways. People felt that Janarian was bringing a different, he fit in so seamlessly because of his talent. Also credit to Mickey Donovan, the special teams coach, and what he's been able to do with the return game there. Because there's a reason why he's been so successful. They have a really good system there in Toronto, but yeah, when you look at why certain CFL teams have had success, again, it's having those all 3 phases, putting the importance in all 3 phases.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the game coming up here with Toronto and Winnipeg for the Grey Cup. One more award, and this is the award that sometimes I refer to it as the staggered award. And the winner this time was Jason Moss of the Montreal Alouettes. One would think that last year would have been a better year for him to win it, but it seems to me sometimes the votes lag behind, and that's what I mean by that. He won this year, and there were a lot of people who felt, especially in Saskatchewan, who felt that Corey Mace maybe should have won it. But that could be the staggered move for next year, if you will. He's put votes in the bank today, this week, or this season that maybe will be returned next year. But for now, Jason Moss took a team last year, and I think they won the Grey Cup. Winning the Grey Cup and then coming to start the next year, you've got a pretty big target on you. And he was able to bring his team, injuries to Fajardo, some key injuries, some key departures, and still they finished first. But as usual, finishing first in the Canadian Football League doesn't get you much. You still got to play the games, but he did a great job this year, and he was well deserving of the award.
Well, I mean, last year, unfortunately, he had to go up against a coach that went 16-2 last year with Ryan Dinwiddie. And it's funny, people I talked to said Ryan Dinwiddie probably did a better coaching job this year because of what the team went through and still made the playoffs. But you look at Jason Moss, when he was brought in to Montreal, there was skepticism, right? Because of what happened in Edmonton and what happened in Saskatchewan when he was the offensive coordinator. Like, would he even coach again in the CFL, right? And so I give him a lot of credit, right? He turned that franchise around. Remember, like, he's the first coach since 2010 to get that team to 12 wins. 14 years. That's all on that team's weight. First division title since 2012 as well. That city has needed a bit of stability, and he's the perfect example of a coach that understood I need to get out of my own way, I need to change, and I also need to put the trust in my players. He's got a lot of work to do going forward because there's a lot of question marks with this Montreal team, but they've built a good foundation there. I think they got a good collaborative effort there. I talked with them after the Grey Cup, and here you hear Danny Machocha talk so much about what Jason Moss was able to do, despite a lot of the uncertainty that they were going through last year. I think being in a more comfortable position this year, having the confidence of the Grey Cup win, it really has put Montreal in a really good spot. The difficulty now, and where coaches make their money, is maintaining that level of success.
Yeah, and it's not easy because, quite frankly, the more success you have, the more challenges you have in meeting the cap. Now, I guess the award I want to give, and it was given to Mar, the owner of the British Columbia Lions, the job that he's done in turning this franchise around. He mentioned something that we all know. I don't think there's been a time in the Canadian Football League in the last couple of decades where the ownership has been as stable as it is today. And then I guess that also is Randy Ambrosie's little. I think he deserves credit for that. That under his stewardship, there aren't problem franchises right now. And
he talked about it. He talked about it. Ownership's probably at its most stable in a really long time. What I felt listening to Mar Dolan was, I felt refreshed. Hearing him talk about, where BC was, and where the focus was, where the priorities lie with that market, how they have really put a lot of time and energy into. They understood that they needed to not bring back fans, right? Because sometimes you hear, they got to get the fans back that were here before. It's not just about that now. It's about manufacturing new fans, right? Bringing the game to people that don't know about it, right? And understanding that you can't just say that the game is good. You need them to come and see that the game is good. So
Absolutely.
He talked a lot about, busing in thousands of kids, right, to come watch games. Going out and doing the football clinics, his family being involved in football with his kids playing. And I can see why he was a top candidate for becoming the owner of the Lions. And I think this is probably, if I'm looking back at Randy Ambrosie's time in the league, this is the biggest home run he has hit. There's been a lot of swing and misses from Randy Ambrosie. I think this was the biggest hit he's had. I mean, look at this. This is all this Grey Cup Festival. It's all because this ownership group knew that they needed to bring a buzz to the city. They done concerts, 50 Cent, One Republic. They're gonna have the Jonas Brothers. Younger. That's something that gravitates to that younger audience. It's and you hear him talk about streaming.
One of David's pet peeves.
Talking about kids not having the computer screen, not having the TV screens that they look to. They're all on the phones. They're all on, tablets and whatever. That's where we need to put the focus. And I love that he said that. It was the most impressive thing I think I heard that night. And yeah, he's got a lot of things he's gonna have to work on with his actual team and how they're playing his stuff. And hopefully, you worry sometimes when an owner gets too involved in those things. I think he's also trust the people that's working.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. But yeah, I mean, I would like for other owners to see what he's doing seeing the success that this market's having right now, and understand if they do even half of what BC has done, they're going to see improvement in what their product they have.
So Amar Doman, the owner of the British Columbia Lions, wins the Commissioner's Award, and actually the Commissioner is the benefactor of an award kind of for bringing him in, as you said.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a symbiotic award, really, because his winning the award shines brightly on the Commissioner's decision to bring him in.
Yeah.
We do know as well, if I can, here we go. Stephen Shamey, recognized with the Hugh Campbell Distinguished Leadership Award. Just some honorable mention here. He's come from, thank you to CFL. And I'm trying to find
both in French and English.
I'm trying to find. There it is, Carolyn Cody. I wanted to talk about her. She works for the BC Lions, and she's the one that's part of the.
Sorry,
the technician takes over.
Producer.
The Jane Mobby Tribute Award, and she talked about promoting the British Columbia Lions, BC Lions, and she's done a great job, and she gets an award for it. And she told everyone there that you ain't seen nothing yet. So there's going to be a lot more stuff coming out of here, and the Grey Cup is just one example. It'll continue with the upcoming time. So those all got awards, and I got to tell you, it was a fun evening. Getting locked down is a lot of fun too, I got to say. Then there's Ambrosie's retirement. We talked a little bit about it in the last show. His retirement, comes at a time that offers the new candidate 2 years before they have to negotiate the new deal and the TV deal and the CFLPA agreement. So at least the new person's going to come in, whoever they are. They're going to get some runway to be able to head towards a successful, step in the future of the Canadian Football League. One of the things that Randy Ambrosie was called to task on is he hoped to double the income of the league, right? It didn't quite happen. They fell short. I think the pandemic had something to do with it.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the Canadian Football League is a business. It has a board, and it has nine teams that voted 5-4 to keep him. But he felt that wasn't enough support, so that's what we understand to be the case, the rumor mill, if you will, and why he decided to leave, and now was the right time. What do you think?
I do think right now is the right time. I think you look at where this league needs to go, and I don't know if Randy Ambrosie had the right ideas to really push the league forward. I understand he tried really hard with the CFL 2.0, trying to get that global outreach, which I can understand, but I felt like you needed to make sure your product here was stronger. I do think that that's something they're going to have to work on. And too much of like the status quo with a lot of things too. Again, I understand and look, a commissioner's job is tough when you have a board of governors, a board that maybe is not as willing to embrace those ideas.
Or they have different ideas. David, that's one of the challenges. If they're not all on the same page.
That does get very challenging. But I do think that a commissioner's got to be able to sell the change too. And maybe that was something he struggled with. I don't know. But I do think that when you talk about revenue, the revenue starts with, making sure your team valuations go up. They haven't gone up, really, right? And we don't know what the BC Lions were purchased for. We don't know what Edmonton was purchased for. I don't even know if we knew what Toronto was purchased for when the MLSE took over. There's just too much of that where, they did the move with Genius, right? And I know that there's percentages of league revenue that goes to Genius. Things like that where the league thinks that they're making the right moves right now, but then you look at the long run, it hasn't really had the effect. And I get it. Sometimes you got to be patient and wait for those things to happen. But CFL doesn't have a lot of time to just sit around and hope things get better. They got to start embracing changes that are going to really have an immediate impact.
Yeah, well, the CFL ownership has gone through a bit of a change, not a drastic change, but a change nonetheless. And that change, of course, is switching from personal ownership, you know, one man or one woman operation where they own the team, to corporate ownership. We saw it with MLSC. We've seen Calgary now more tied with the NHL team. We see this going on throughout, where there's been a change in ownership as well in Edmonton, which to me is incredible, because Edmonton, if there's a standard bearer for the Canadian Football League and Canadian Football League's success, it was the Edmonton Elks. And I'm sorry to say they're trying to get back there again, right? So now they've got new ownership. So there's a new thinking process that has to be accommodated. And unfortunately, Randy Ambrosie has made some decisions, and now he has to live with those decisions. And now, with his departure, they can leave those decisions and reinvent the wheel, if you will. And it does need reinventing. Yeah,
they do. And that's going to be the challenge, right? But I think they have to look at where do they want the league? What do they want the league to be in 5 years, right? Do they want to really focus on expansion? Do they want to focus? Where should the focus be? That's something the new commissioner is going to have to work on going forward. But at least I will say the 9 teams, the ownership, there's no issues with those ownership groups.
None.
And that's a big plus going forward. At least you have that. Now, can they get those owners to collectively come together and do what's best for this game?
And not only do what's best, but identify. Because that's the key. They've got to identify what's best for the league, and then it's got to be proven to be right, which is a process, and we'll see how that process goes. Let's continue with ours by talking about the game. We've only got a dozen minutes left. Let's talk about the game. We'll start with the fact that the Toronto Argonauts beat the Montreal Alouettes, who were in first place. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, a team that started 0-4, ends up winning and going to the Grey Cup again. As I said at the top of the show, this is a rematch from 2022. What's different in this game?
What's different, man? I mean, what's different here is I think both teams have learned things from that 2022 game, right? Toronto understood how tough it is to get to the mountaintop. Winnipeg also understands how easily it is to come off that mountaintop. Really, right? And how things have changed in those 2 years, right? Toronto, people were still unsure if that was a team that can really compete, right, with the win. This was a time where the East still wasn't considered at the level of the West Division, and then eventually things started to change a little bit in that regard, right, where Toronto started to build the right culture. I think Toronto's established a culture. They realized who needs to stick around, who needs to be who needs to be a part of this group to ensure the success is continuous, right? This isn't a one and done sort of thing. So Toronto has realized that they gotta how to be like the Winnipeg in the East. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna see a team reach 5 straight Grey Cups again, like Winnipeg. Winnipeg could easily get to 6 straight next year. It could very well happen, right? But when I look at what Toronto's done, two Grey Cup appearances in the last 3 years. There was too many of those one and dones in Toronto, right?
Well, the one and done, and then collapse of the of the team.
They've been competitive each and every year. They found the right mix. They know how to interchange players the right way, but there's a core there still that I think that's the biggest thing for Toronto.
That was the promise that Pinball made. We had a chance to interview him. We put it out there. We talked to Pinball, and the one thing I remember from that first press conference when he told us, I want to build a team that has a chance to win the Grey Cup every year. Well, promises made, promises kept. Nobody can say that Pinball didn't deliver on that thing. And I got to tell you, it's a total management team. This is not Pinball Clemens. This is not Ryan Dinwiddie. This is not the GM staff, if you will. This is all of them working together, pulling in the same direction, and that includes bringing in the right players to play the game, to understand it, to execute it, and the players that they have, the handful, like we talked about Ryan Hunter, and you know, that are leaders. That is important. There's a leadership group that goes from the penthouse to the clubhouse, and that's something that makes these kinds of winners. That's how they replicated the Winnipeg situation. That's the way Winnipeg replicated the Calgary situation before that. We have seen this through the years where there are teams that figure out Rubik's Cube to have greatness in their future, opportunity. And right now, these two teams, Winnipeg and Toronto, they are the 2020 teams that have done really well repeatedly.
Yeah, it's the tough part is how do you maintain that with player movement such a big thing in the CFL. Both teams have figured out how to prioritize which players need to stay and which ones need to go. Like when you look at this game especially, right? You look at the two rosters from 2022 and 2024. A lot of similarities, right? You're not in a position right now where it's a totally different Toronto team. Yes, quarterbacks are different. Winnipeg, same quarterback. Coaching staffs have even changed too. But the culture, again, it's all about culture with these guys. They want to have that continuity. They want to have that established. You're coming into our organization. This is what we expect. This is what we want. So, you know, I think when teams go through tough times, like Toronto did this year, it's that established culture and identity within the team itself to say, yes, it's a tough situation we have to go through, but we've prepared for this. We have established the right way to respond and not let outside issues creep into what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, for example, in the quarterback room in Toronto, the plan that comes out of that room and that the play caller, Ryan Dinwiddie, the plan that he puts together for the most part is the same plan for all the quarterbacks. It doesn't matter who goes under center. Now, needless to say, there are advantages and or positives that players can contribute, that a quarterback can contribute, but the main plan is the same for all of them. And that consistency, I think, is really important. And I'm going to take it another step further and talk about what are the advantages for Winnipeg at under center and those for Toronto. Toronto can say that they have a quarterback that understands the system, so it's not so bad, and it's not somebody who's inexperienced. Arbuckle knows the Canadian Football League, and he's worked with Ryan Dinwiddie for a long time, so he has a lot of runway for him to understand what Ryan wants him to do. One of the advantages that Toronto has against Caleros and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is he's pretty fresh. Arbuckle he's been only sacked once all year, yeah. Right? The opposite is true with Caleros. So, you know, they've got to keep him clean. He has a little more wear at this time of the year. So that maybe softens the advantage that we all know Winnipeg has. I don't know how you feel about it.
I'll say a couple of things to that. Yeah, I think with Arbuckle, Dinwiddie knows that if he wants to have any chance in this game, Arbuckle understands what he wants to be done. It's a more of a seamless transition with Chad Kelly out to go with Arbuckle because he knows that he can execute the offense more so to hit what he wants than, unfortunately, with the Cameron Dukes.
That doesn't mean we won't see Cameron Dukes.
There could be a possibility.
It doesn't mean we won't see him. There's no guarantee.
Yeah. In a Grey Cup, you're doing whatever you need to do to win the game, right? With Caleros, we know how good he is, but you know, in talking with him this week, I think in a little bit of the back of his mind, he understands that he's got to play a certain way because of the way Toronto gets pressure on him. And in Toronto's case, they're hoping that what they've been able to do in those two games early in the year plays in the back of his mind. Oh, if I don't get the ball out quick here, if I don't make the quick play, I'm going to find myself in a position to get sacked. I don't think they're in his head. But as the game goes along, and if that happens, if you start to see Toronto get pressure on him, you're gonna be worried. If you're Winnipeg, you got to worry that that's gonna overwhelm him a little bit, and he's gonna maybe make the mistakes that you don't really expect Collaros to make. It happened last year in the Grey. Like, Zach Collaros didn't look like Zach Collaros against Montreal last year.
No, he didn't.
Right? The mistakes that he was making weren't what we expected. So if your team went up against Zach Collaros, you need to throw him off his game. And you need to do it early. Because if Zach Collaros is locked in early, and that's going to be Winnipeg's. We were talking with you.
Yeah, that's.
Even if you have to do some short passes, quick, out of his hands, quick, get him into the game. Because if he's struggling, if he's not getting completions, if he's getting sacked, it's going to be tougher for him to get himself going in the game.
The game for Toronto is to get to Zach. The game for Zach is to toss the ball and basically tire out the defense, because if he throws the ball quickly, the defensive line, the defenders have to still run their patterns, if you will. They still have to do their job. So even if they don't get a play on it, they're still using up energy. So that's what Winnipeg's going to try and do, is tire the defense. On the other hand, Toronto, in their treatment of the Winnipeg defense, for the most part, is going to be about the same thing, because Arbuckle's going to have to throw quickly when he's throwing. But the real key, I think, for Toronto to wear out the defense is get a successful running game going. They're going to need Kadeem Carey to carry this team for a time in this game.
I don't even think it's just running the ball. I think in the passing game too.
Absolutely, to set the passing game up.
You don't have to go for deep shots all the time against Winnipeg, because their defensive backs are so good they can stay with the receivers. Don't be afraid if there's if you're on a first down and there's only a 6-yard check down to Kadeem Carey, take the 6-yard check down. Try to chip away at this defense. That defensive line, you gotta play physical against them. Run
Absolutely.
the ball. Unfortunately, in the last game they played against Winnipeg, Kadeem Carey was taken out in the first half with an injury. He was averaging 7 yards a carry in that first half. He was finding ways to get into, cut into that armor of that Winnipeg defense, right? Their defensive backs are so good, you have to almost not make, you don't want them to be a factor early. Make them try to come in, right? They have to respect the run.
Absolutely.
And I think they will definitely respect the run, because they know with Arbuckle in, and what Carey's going to be a big part of it. But you got to get the other guys going. Deonta McMahon, get the speed. You have to get speed against this Winnipeg defense as well. I was watching that game with Saskatchewan, and it's like AJ Ouellette was breaking for some big runs, but because they were down, we don't want to see Trevor Harris throwing the ball 4 times. A game like this for Nick Arbuckle, you don't want him throwing the ball.
If he throws the ball more than 34 times or around 30 times, then you know the Argos have a problem, that the run game's not working.
Run game isn't working, and you also want your defense to not be put in disadvantaged positions where you're going with quick 2-and-outs. That means your defense is out again. We are unable to get we get a first down. Now our defense has to come back. They're more tired, and Winnipeg's going to take advantage, because Toronto has struggled with coverage. Kenny Lawler can get some big yards on Toronto, and the defense is going to have to play one of those bend, don't break. If we might allow some big plays to Kenny Lawler, we just can't let them be for 6 points. We got to let them be the ones that are scoring field goals instead of touchdowns.
A couple of things before we go. Janarian Grant, former Winnipeg Blue Bomber, a key factor for the Toronto Argonauts, a guy that can make a difference. They've got the advantage, I think, in special teams.
They do. Winnipeg has the advantage at quarterback. They have advantage in the pass coverage. Toronto's got the advantage, I think, in
the receiving
pass
core
rush.
And the
receiving core is pretty good. The problem is, I think Winnipeg has fewer questions. And Brady Oliveira, you always talk about keeping them out of the game. You can't. You got to make Zach Collaros a non-factor as much as possible. And
the best thing that the Argos have going for them is, I think, they have proven this year the ability to make the big play. Out of all 3 phases, big play offense, big play defense, big play special teams. And that's for them to win, they're going to have to be successful that way.
Winnipeg doesn't make a lot of mistakes. They were earlier, But if they do make a mistake, you got to take advantage. You cannot.
Absolutely.
You cannot. If they throw if it's a bad throw that's able to be picked up, you got to make that pick. They fumble the ball, you better get on that ball. Winnipeg has made some uncharacteristic mistakes when the pressure is on. I feel like the pressure isn't on them as much this year, but I feel like people are in a position where they're not. The Toronto Argonauts are going to feel disrespected because they're going in with the backup quarterback.
Yeah, and it's what is it? What was the line? 9.5 points?
9.5. They're going to have that prove people wrong attitude. Winnipeg's going to have that. We're not worrying about what happened the last 2 times in this Grey Cup.
Bulletin board info right there.
Yeah.
That's going to be there. Well, look, it was fun being here. If you're in the Vancouver area, come check out the convention center. There's a lot of great stuff going on. And if you're not, you've got a great football game to look forward to on Sunday. It'll be 3 o'clock, because now we're interested in time difference, right?
Yeah.
We've become educated. 3 o'clock local time, 6 o'clock back home in Toronto. Thank you for joining us here. This has been CFL Talk with David Morassutti, Candid Frank Stanisci. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again. We'll be back from Vancouver. Just don't know exactly when. We'll surprise you. Thanks for watching.